Thanks very much for having me on the show today, Mike.
Oh, you're very welcome. You're very welcome. And just in case someone doesn't know you, you're from Breakthrough Public Speaking. That's your company.
That's right, yeah.
And you are a public speaking trainer. Would that be the correct?
Yes, that's right. So I'm a coach and a trainer. So I coach small business owners who want to be more confident when they present. My specialist field is on camera, so speaking on camera for videos, webinars, live virtual events, these kinds of things. But I also do some in person, but the focus is about, speaking on camera. So it's a bit of coaching and training as well. That's right.
Yeah. And in particular, I'd like to talk about the virtual public speaking, because that really caught my eye and ear when I first met you. So, I mean, let's dive in and just get to how did you get into this subject?
Thanks. It's a great question. I always love to find out people's why, and I think it kind of brings their business, their subject matter to life. And I think what you realize is that we're not all that different. And I think public speaking is one of those things where people can think, only really confident, outgoing people can be great speakers. And it's just not the case. And that's exactly what I found. And that's why I'm here today doing what I'm doing. So growing up, I had really high anxiety and panic, and I never did any form of anything that involved speaking in front of others, performing, speaking. I hid away from it all. By the time I got to uni in particular, in my master's degree, I had to speak in front of others. So I went on a journey where I realized that speaking was important, but I was too afraid to do it. So I eventually decided to overcome my own fear of public speaking. I joined Toastmasters International, and I really worked on my speaking. I delivered lots of speeches. I entered lots of speech contests, won multiple awards. And there was something in that I realized, which was that, wow, this is a skill. This is a skill. It's not something you're born with. It really is a skill, and a skill that everyone can learn. And in that moment, I really wanted to share that with others. And that's when the idea of my business was born. I want to show other people, everyone in particular, those who are shy, those who have businesses and really great careers, but the one thing missing is that they're being held back due to their fear of public speaking. And I felt that was so sad. So I really felt that it's so important to get this message out there. And that was really the basis and the foundation of starting my business. Then when the pandemic hit, I realized that there was something else that was quite important, which was that speaking on camera was a different skill, is a different skill from just speaking in person. And that even if you're a confident speaker in person, you're not necessarily going to be confident on camera. And it is a different skill, a different set of fears, a different skill. So then I ended up niching down into my presentation skills on camera. So that's how I really fell into specifically presentation skills on camera.
Yeah. So you can get someone who's a really good public speaker in a face-to-face situation or with a crowd, but they find it difficult when they're speaking virtually.
Yes, absolutely.
So why is that? Why would they have that difficulty?
There are quite a few reasons for that. So I was quite surprised that at the very beginning of my business, I wasn't entirely sure who to expect. When you first start a business, you have an idea of who your clients are going to be. And it was nothing like what I thought, because the people who are actually coming to me were confident speakers already. And they were actually speakers, but they weren't confident on camera. And it is a different experience. It's a very different experience. Different fears come up. And I think it can throw a lot of people because they don't expect that. And I've had some people who, for instance, they feel very confident in front of an in-person audience. And they've told me, I feel comfortable speaking in front of a few thousand people, but not on camera. And I feel they feel it's almost too, feel too vulnerable to actually post a video online because they don't know who's going to see it. They don't know, they can't see their audience, and they don't know who's going to see their video. And for them, that seems really scary. And that's fair enough. And I think it's about working through those fears, but acknowledging that speaking on video does bring up a different set of fears. So to work through those. And sometimes it can be just a fear of the tech going wrong. Whenever you're doing anything virtual, I know when I've done some pretty big master classes and my fingers and toes are crossed really that everything is going to be okay. For this event, there's not going to be any kind of technical hiccups. That's the last thing you would want. And that can be a real fear too, especially if you're not very techy. So there are many different unique types of fears, and also the self-consciousness that can arise. I don't know about you, but when I first saw myself back on camera, this is very, very common experience that you see yourself back and you go, oh no, that's really awful. And you sort of cringe when you see yourself back, you cringe when you hear yourself back. And this can really throw people as well. So they can be totally confident in in-person audience, but then when it comes to seeing themselves back, having to navigate the technology, not being able to see their audience, being recorded, these can bring up different types of fears and actually make them more nervous. Also depends on what kind of personality you can have. Some people just feel more at ease in a crowd when they can see their audience and they feel that sense of being reassured by the audience. Other people actually feel that's way too much stimulus and they feel more comfortable online without a live audience being there and just doing their pre-recorded videos. So it does depend a lot on your personality as well. But those are some of the key differences basically that confident speakers who really shine in front of in-person audiences can be thrown by the fact that they just didn't expect those different types of fears to come up. And the second point is that they didn't actually train in the skills for speaking on camera. So maybe they're actually not looking into the camera, or they're using this of their hand gestures. They're somehow in front of the camera, making their hands look really huge. So speaking on camera means adapting your speaking to your virtual stage, so that you've got your hand gestures showing, or you're framed well. These kinds of things that you might not necessarily think about for an in-person audience.
So, for example, hand gestures. Are they equally important for virtual and public speaking? Or are there different hand gestures that would be specific to a virtual presentation?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. And a lot of people get confused about this. Hand gestures are great. They help you to emphasize your point. Body language is key for communication. Body language is important in any form of public speaking. However, when you're speaking virtually, there are some things to think about, like the fact that if you use your hand gestures way too close to the camera or in front of your face, and that would just look strange on camera. Or if you would use your hand gestures, for instance, I'm using my hand gestures, I'd have them about here. So on camera, you'd only see sort of my fingertips, which would look a bit strange because you couldn't fully see the gestures. Right, so it's on camera, it would be just about raising your gestures, having them a little bit closer to your face. So you would never normally use gestures like that when you're speaking to someone, or if you're in front of an in-person audience. You're only doing that because you're on camera. However, it is really important to keep it natural. But the truth is, once you practice those, once you become aware of how you're looking on the screen, your framing, where you want your gestures, then it does become natural. Because what you don't want is for anything to seem unnatural, anything about the way you're moving, your gestures, the way you're speaking. You want everything to be as you would normally speak. And one of the things that people often get told is don't use gestures. It's a distraction, and it's just not the case. Gestures are important, but some gestures can be a distraction. If you have a repeated gesture that's really annoying, then you can work on making sure you don't do that sort of repeated gesture. If it's just something like you're fiddling with your fingers because you're nervous, that would be a distraction. But if you're using your gestures in a natural way and with purpose, then they can really help to emphasize your points.
Yeah. So I remember you mentioning in another interview about people have this expectation that everything has to be perfect, and you almost have to be acting. And if they make a mistake, it's the biggest thing ever. Because obviously in the past, way back in the past, there was only TV, and we had a massive audience and everything had to be perfect, etc., etc. And now on social media, people can be a bit more natural and a bit more authentic. Does that help with people's attitudes towards public speaking?
I think it does. It depends what you do. So I do think that times have changed a lot due to social media. So there's a huge difference now in what's expected. And there is a lot more video content out there that is just really, really relaxed, as you've seen. Running a business is different. If it's for work purposes, running your business, then of course you need to think about how you want to present yourself to the world. And maybe that is about being really relaxed, and that's fine. So I have some clients tell me that, they want to start posting some videos or delivering some virtual events like masterclasses or webinars, and they want to start from a really high standard because their company is very established, and they don't want to just sort of start off just having a few videos that aren't that great. They want to start from a high standard, and there's nothing wrong with that. On the other hand, it's also fine to you don't have to be perfect in every video. It's not about that either. It's more about taking some action, getting that experience, because your first few videos, they're not going to be the best. Your first talk is not going to be the best. That's
Sure.
fine. That's all part of the learning. But if you keep putting it off, thinking, I'll wait until I'm perfect, then that's really not helpful. So it's not about waiting until you're perfect. It's about learning the skills so that you're putting your best out there, you're being authentic, you're being natural, you're not acting, these kinds of things. And then just go for it, get some feedback as well. Feedback always helps. Someone who knows a little bit about speaking and video or virtual presentations, get some good feedback, and then you'll feel much more confident about it.
Yeah. I mean, for example, I see people doing videos on LinkedIn, professionals creating videos. And do you have any guidance on what they should talk about? Should they be talking about their business, or should it be more social stuff?
Yeah, sure. So that's a really great question. And I think that, again, it depends on the business, but a good place to start is to answer a frequently asked question. Okay, that is a great place to start as a business owner. So what are the types of questions that people are asking you, and then seek to answer them? It's this foundation of so many ideas for your content. I mean, one of the things I teach in my coaching is your content. So what are you going to say? We kind of break down all the types of things you can talk about. So you could sort of brainstorm all the everything that you cover in your business that you talk about for your work, and create sort of a system of categories so that you can then break all those categories down. That's what I do with all of my topics, so that I can draw out content from it really, really easily. So I know one of my topics will be confidence. And so I've got loads of subheadings under confidence, from panic attacks to anxiety to different types of fears. And so that's really easy for me to draw out one of those topics and talk about them. And in particular, ask a frequently asked question with regard to confidence. Like, what if I go blank in a talk? What if I go blank in a talk? That's a pretty commonly asked question. It's a pretty common problem. And then I can just answer that. And then I know that the content that I'm putting out there is relevant to my audience. And that's what's important. It's about offering value to your audience, offering some kind of information that will help them. And this in turn means that you position yourself as an expert in the field, because they know that you know what you're talking about. And by giving that demonstration where you're actually explaining something, then it gives them confidence. It gives your audience confidence in you, that you know how to solve their problems. And that's why they're more likely to come to you when they need that problem solved. And these days, it's really clear that personal branding is in. So people don't want to see just a company image. They want to see the person, the human being behind the business, the human being that they'll be working with. That's really, really important these days. And so when you're speaking, then you're showing yourself, hey, this is me. I'm who you'll be working with. This is what I'm like. And let's do this. And then immediately you connect with your audience so much better, rather than just putting a post out there, an image. Nothing wrong with text and posts, of course. That's a really important part of your social media marketing too. But if you're missing the videos and missing out on those speaking events, speaking at networking events, speaking on podcasts, or running your own podcast, putting your own videos out there, videos on your website, then really you're missing out a lot. So I'd say the best place to start is your answering frequently asked questions on your social media. But then you can also think about describing your service as a bit about who you are, what you do, how you help people. You can put your LinkedIn profile on there, your video on your website. So that's a great place to start for anyone who's offering any kind of professional service or running their own business.
Yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on auto cues and scripts?
So there's definitely a place for auto cue. I personally don't use them. So I'm currently recording my Breakthrough Virtual Speaker program, and I've recorded the entire first module without any auto cue. I recorded my whole of my mini course as well without any auto cue, because I really feel it's important to come across in a natural way. And it's quite difficult to read in a way that sounds like you're just speaking. It is a skill. However, there is a place for it, because let's say you're delivering some material that's very detailed. There are lots of numbers, statistics, detailed, technical things that you need to be completely accurate with everything and pay attention to this kind of detail. Then really, I don't think there's anything wrong with it, but you'd have to just train a little bit in it first. So practice with the auto cue and then deliver it. But I think what a lot of people do, what most people seem to do, the people that I work with have come to me, is that they want to go straight into the auto cue. And then they don't really develop their speaking skills, because it is a skill. The more you do it, if you imagine that you want to do a 1 minute video every week, that's what I do on social media. So if I scripted it all out, one, that's really time consuming. But fair dues, I mean, you would save time in terms of retakes, but ultimately you don't develop your skills as a speaker, right? But if you just speak into the camera, do your 1 minute video, because you know your topic so well, you've answered that frequently asked question. It's actually only nerves that's holding you back. It's not that you can't do it, because you can speak, you can do that. You can, if you're having a one-to-one with someone, you're answering their questions, you're telling them exactly what you do, you're showing them how you can help them, you're doing it already. It's only the fact that when you press record on that video that you kind of freeze up, or people tend to freeze up and then they don't know what to say, and then they think they need to read it all out, but you really don't. So I'd say give it a go. Try just to speak on your videos, try to speak at a presentation rather without reading it, and see how that goes. And I think you'll be surprised, because you don't really need those notes. And that's a lot of the time when I work with people in my coaching, this is the process they go through, where they actually realize they don't need to read from their scripts. And that's hugely empowering. They're like, wow, I can do this. Because actually reading from a script can be very, very stressful. I had someone who wanted to deliver an some online training, and he had every word written out, which means at any point, if there was a question, if there was some deviation to what he was delivering, that would be very stressful, because they'd have to find exactly where he was and read those words out. And he was a speaker. He was a public speaker already. And so I said, right, today, I want you to don't look at the slides at all. I want you to deliver your first module. And he delivered it perfectly. And in that moment, he realized, I don't need to read it. And that gave him so much more confidence, because he realized he did not have to rely on every word being written out to deliver his online training. And that it was actually much more relaxing not to be tied to those words, because you can sort of go with the flow. You can have your slides there, you have your bullet points, you can interact with your virtual audience more, and make sure that you're more in tune with their needs during the presentation and the training.
Yeah, so it's a bit like having stabilizers on a bike before you start to ride a bike. You have
yes,
guide rails.
It can be.
Yeah,
that's right. There can be a good guide, yes, for sure. And I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with bullet points, for instance. That's different. I have notes, for instance. I might have some notes just by my camera. I'll have some bullet points, because let's say I want to say 3 points in a video, then I might just not remember the third point. It's just one of those things, isn't it? You want to remember 3 simple points and you just can't. So just have them written down by your camera, and that will be much easier for you to do that. You don't have to remember every word, and you'll just take a sneaky glance over to your notes, and it will appear much more natural to your audience.
Yeah, I was just curious when you mentioned when people go blank during a presentation. what do you do? How do you handle that?
Going blank in a presentation is a
Yeah.
massive fear for so many. Probably one of the biggest fears, because it's a thing. It is something that we all experience. I've gone blank before. Sometimes you can also have medical conditions which make you go blank, or you're getting brain fog, these kinds of things. So it is a big issue for many. And what I say is that there are many, many different ways. It would be too much to cover it in this short episode. But the thing with going blank is that it doesn't last as long as you think it does. All right. So that millisecond that you go blank for will seem like half an hour to you, but it is in fact a millisecond to your audience. And that's the key to remember. Also, there are just so many different points about this, but if you did go blank and for it just lasted more than a millisecond, okay, and everyone's looking at you and you're thinking, oh dear, I've really forgotten where I was, it really isn't the end of the world to pause. For instance, even a slightly longer pause is fine. I mean, people enjoy pauses. There's nothing wrong with pause. That's a beneficial thing to have in your talk. And actually, no one would notice it. Right. So if you're the only person who's thinking, oh no, I've gone blank, I don't know what to say, is you. No one else in the room knows that. No one else knows that but you. So you can just take a longer pause, get yourself together, take a big deep breath, and then it will come to you. You're not going to go blank for the rest of the talk. Very rare that would happen. And you can also have things to help you, like you can have your notes there. Whether you've got your bullet points or you've decided to write it out, just go back to the notes. And something else that I'd like to throw out there is it really the end of the world, even if you said, I'm sorry, I've just gone blank? Because I've actually seen some pretty advanced speakers actually say that in the room. And I've just been filled with admiration. Like, that's great. You've just been honest, open, and you're confident enough in that moment just to admit a moment of being human. Now, what's wrong with that?
Yeah, because Boris Johnson did a speech, I think it was last year, and he was talking about something, I can't remember what. Then he lost his train of thought and he started talking about something completely different. I'm not sure whether he handled it correctly or not, but kept on talking anyway. He didn't panic.
Right, yes, and
That
this
was the
is
key
it.
thing. Yeah.
Yes. And so even advanced speakers, experienced speakers, people are speaking all the time, will lose their place, will go blank momentarily, will forget what they just said. These are actually just normal things. So
Yeah.
of course it's better not to. That's the ideal, that it would be better, but it really isn't the end of the world. And people don't really think much of it. Like, oh my goodness, did you see that person went blank for a moment? I mean, no one is really thinking that. So the biggest judge is always ourselves. And I think that is the key to remember that, especially when it comes to managing the fear of public speaking, that our biggest critic is most likely ourselves. And that people really aren't out there to judge us. They're not thinking about, did that person go blank? Did they pause too long just then? They're really not thinking about those things. We are, and we're sort of over analyzing ourselves and our performance in great detail in a way that no one else is. And the only thing that does is to raise our own anxiety levels. That's the truth. So I think it's about being more relaxed about that and thinking about the worst case scenario, or just be like, oh, my apologies, I've gone blank, I'll just check my notes. And that's not even that bad, right? So I think it's about putting things into perspective. And the truth is, once you become more confident, these things are not problems, because as a confident speaker, that even if you do go blank, actually it's just not a problem. It really isn't. And that's what it's about. I think true confidence is about knowing that whatever happens, you'll be able to handle it. It's not being confident that nothing wrong will happen. I definitely won't go blank. I definitely won't get a difficult question. Everything will go fine. The tech will all work perfectly. Therefore, I'm confident. No. It's about, okay, so I do go blank, but I can handle it. The tech goes wrong, but I can handle it. I'll get an awkward question, but I can handle it. And that's confidence.
Yeah. That makes total sense. I guess it's about also looking outwards rather than looking inwards. So
Yes.
you're not looking and thinking about how you're sounding or what's happening or other person's thinking. You're kind of looking outwards and thinking about what you're presenting, what you're telling people.
Exactly. And that's actually the central idea that I explain in all of my coaching and my talks. It is exactly that. It's about focusing on others, focusing on your message, focusing on your audience, and not focusing on yourself. Then you'll feel significantly more confident. And you're less likely also to have experienced the symptoms of fear, like going blank and these kinds of things, because overall you're not focusing so much on yourself. I think one of the reasons we have those types of symptoms of fear, like going blank, is because we're so panicked and we're overthinking about ourselves and what people will think of us and what if we get things wrong. And there's just too much anxiety going on there. But if we're just taking the focus off of ourselves and onto others, our message and our audience, then things are much more straightforward. We'll feel more relaxed, and our message will actually be clearer for our audience to receive as well.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, with social media videos, most creators are speaking just to a camera and not to a person. Are there any tips you have that can deal with that, so you feel like you are talking to someone?
Yes. Well, you just answered it, because it really is that. It's imagining that you are talking to a person. Because the truth is, if you imagined, you're there home alone and you see some kind of inanimate object like your lamp, you couldn't speak to an inanimate object with any kind of feeling. It's hard. And a camera is that inanimate object, and it's really hard to actually come to life. So what happens is that people tend to speak in maybe just a very unenergized or unenthusiastic way, and that can come across in the video. So what it is, it's about actually bringing yourself more to life and imagining that you are speaking to a person. That is the key with speaking on camera for those pre-recorded videos, to imagine that you're actually speaking to someone. That's really, really important. And you can have lots of different techniques for that. One technique is you could put a little picture of someone by your camera, or a smiley face, something like this. Anything that helps to bring that moment to life. Imagine you're speaking to your audience. That's something I tend to do. I don't actually use any smiley faces or anything. I tend to just imagine that I'm actually speaking to my audience and the people who actually need my help. And that's really motivating, because you want to help, you can help, and that will give you that energy that you need to present well in your video.
Yeah, yeah. And I suppose related to that is, like in Zoom meetings, if you're doing a presentation and you've got, say, 10 people on the screen, is it best to concentrate on just one of them while you're speaking? Because some people might look disinterested, but this one person might be interested. Maybe best to concentrate on them.
Yes, so that would be the same for any type of audience. If you're looking at an audience, don't be put off by facial expression, is all I'll say, because facial expression, you do not know what people are thinking. And some people can be, in terms of their facial expression, they can be really off-putting. They could look really, really bored. They could look like they disagree with everything that you're saying and everything about you, when they're actually not, because that's just their concentrating face. That's just the face that they have when they're concentrating or when they're listening. But to you, they could look bored and so on. So it's really important to not pay too much attention. However, there's a balance in that, because sometimes you can see people who are really engaged with you and they're nodding lots, and that can spur you on to feel more enthusiastic. So sometimes, from time to time, you can just take on board your audience reaction. That can be helpful. With the Zoom room, it's slightly different, because when you're speaking, if you're actually doing a presentation, then you really want to be looking into the camera. That's your point of eye contact. And that looks like you're making eye contact with the audience. So it's looking into the camera. But if you're having a conversation, obviously you want to be looking at their faces. If you're delivering training, then you would look into the camera when you're delivering that training. But from time to time, you're also looking at people's expressions, because you need to make sure that everyone in the room is paying attention, they're engaging, and you can tell a lot from their facial expression. So that would be a bit of a mix to check out how they're doing in the Zoom room, just looking at the screen. And then, but mostly if you're speaking, then looking into the camera, but certainly don't be put off by facial expression, because everyone actually listens in different ways.
Sure. And with Zooms and also online videos, I mean, you've got a lovely background there. And I guess that's really important to have a nice background. You see people with books in the background and things like that. Are there any tips you have for backgrounds?
It's interesting because I just posted about this recently. The main thing is not to overthink your background, because I know a lot of people get stuck or just hung up on the background thing. And if it's holding you back from doing videos, then you're overthinking this. And it does not have to be this beautiful bookcase in the background. It really doesn't. You can have a plain white wall. When I first started doing videos, I just used my plain wall, and I liked that. But then after a while, I decided, actually, I moved house, and then in my lounge now I had this bookcase, and I decided I would use that. It's just where I chose to be. But you don't have to. It really isn't that important. The main tip I would give is to make sure it's, let's say, as clutter-free as possible. Because what you don't want is for anything in your background to distract your audience. So if there's something that maybe it's just not clear what it is, and instead of focusing on you and what you're saying, they're sort of thinking, oh, I wonder what that is in the background. You know, what is it that they've got there? Or it's very messy and they're thinking, oh my goodness, this person's really messy. So you don't want them to be thinking anything other than just paying attention to your words. So that's really what's important, as clutter-free as you can, but don't overthink it. And you don't have to have this sort of perfect background. You really don't. And then there's the debate about whether to use a real or virtual one. And that, again, in terms of your tech setup, it depends on each individual in terms of what their home space is like, if they're doing this from home, or their workspace, and what budget they have, all kinds of different factors. But it really is about keeping it simple and not allowing these types of things to hold you back from actually putting something out there. And the truth is, these days, these short kind of portrait style videos are really, really popular. And you really can't see much of your background anyway. You're just mostly seeing the person and their face. What I do say about background is also that it's good to stand out from your background. So let's say you've got a predominantly white background right now. So if you were wearing a white shirt, then you would just blend into your background, and that's never good. If I wore sort of a gray shirt, gray or white, I'd be blending into my background. So you want to wear a color that helps you to stand out from your background, so that they can just see you better in your videos.
Sure. And I noticed that you're standing up at the moment. Is that something that you recommend to your clients?
Yes, it is actually. But again, everyone is different. But personally, I prefer to stand because I feel that it helps me to bring my best self every time I speak. And that the reason being that it helps me to have more energy. So as soon as I sit, and my energy is different, it's just different. It's just different. So if I'm sitting, for instance, there's also a difference in my voice. And anyone who's done any voice training will know that this is the case, because when you're standing, you're sort of breathing better, you're using your muscles in a different way. So your voice sounds different, because you're using your voice a bit better. You're not slouched in a chair. So it means that if you're standing, you've got more oxygen coming through to your vocal cords, and that helps. That makes you sound more confident, or your voice sounds stronger and more confident anyway when you're standing to when you're sitting. But it also helps to just have more energy when you present. And sometimes I've done a few videos sitting. I mean, it's not really a big deal, but certainly if I'm ever doing a virtual presentation, let's say a live virtual presentation, I would never sit for it, because you do need a lot more energy for virtual audiences. They're a distracted lot. They're very distracted because they're on their phones, they're checking their emails in a way that they wouldn't be for an in-person event. So as a virtual speaker, it's really about, bringing more energy into that space. And
Yeah.
standing helps to do that.
And also, I noticed you got the eye contact as well. Your eyes are level with the camera, which is something I need to do actually myself. But it does,
Yes.
it's quite effective, isn't it?
It makes a big difference, and it's really not difficult to do. Even if you're sitting at your desk, you can just put a little stand on your desk. So I've got a sitting desk that I also have. If I'm in meetings, even I'll just put my computer on a stand, and then I'm at eye level. And I think that is good because it means you're not looking down into the camera, and it just looks like you're having a normal conversation with someone, because that's how you would normally speak. You'd be making eye contact like that. So I do feel it's better. It looks much better when you're able to have your camera at eye level.
Yeah, definitely. And if someone was like creating an ad, for example, on Facebook or on Google, in fact, do you have any tips for that? In
Yes,
terms of maybe a
definitely.
short video, like 15 seconds, 20 seconds.
Yes. So I only have experience of doing Facebook ads. And for that, then my main advice would be use video. Definitely use video over an image, because in my own experience, videos always outperform images. And I'm not the only one who's discovered this. You've probably discovered this yourself in the Facebook ads that you do, that these videos always outperform images. So it's about doing a video, first of all, and then keeping it, short and snappy and to the point, because no one wants to watch sort of a long video. And it's those first few seconds which are most important on your ad. That's really what counts. But I think this is mainly, being succinct and using those first few seconds in a valuable way. And of course, all the other skills that you bring into it, and speaking naturally, being well framed, having a clutter-free background, these kinds of things all make a difference. Using your subtitles so people can read it if they've got their phone on silent. So all these little aspects also really, really make a huge difference. The most important would be how you present on camera, and is what you're saying of value to your audience.
Yes, I agree absolutely on that one. So we come to the point of the interview that you've been looking forward to. We'll ask you some quick fire fun questions.
Go for it.
Okay, so the first question is Chinese or Indian food? Which one would you prefer?
Oh, that's a tough one, but I'd have to say Chinese.
Chinese food.
I'm a fan of them both, but I'd have to say Chinese.
Okay, thank you. Cats or dogs? Are you a cat person or a dog person?
Dogs.
Yeah, okay. Do you have a pet, by the way?
No, I don't. I don't. But if I were going to get one, it would be a dog.
Okay. And what would you say was your favorite book?
The New Meditation Handbook. That is a book that I've been using to meditate from for about over 20 years. And it's an extraordinary practical handbook. I have meditations every day that I just draw upon, and it helps me to feel calm, relaxed, and positive.
Great. Do you have a unfulfilled ambition?
Oh, an unfulfilled ambition. Yes, I suppose. I mean, in terms of my meditation practice, I think my ambition is to overcome all of my distraction and negative minds, and come to a place of great peace and concentration, and improve my human qualities in whatever way I can through meditation. And then in terms of my business, I suppose I'd like to help as many people know that they can be the confident speaker that they want to be, that they don't need to hide away, and that everyone has a voice. Everyone deserves to shine and be out there. And that really is one of my greatest ambitions, to help other people realize that they can be the speaker they want to be in their lives, in their work, in their business.
Great. Do you have a favorite quote that can maybe motivate you even when things are kind of going pear-shaped? A quote
Yeah, so I think I think there are quite a few quotes that I use, certainly from my meditation practice, which is quotes like, everything depends upon the mind. And it's such a simple thing to remember throughout my day. So I remember that in any given situation, I can choose to change my mind. I can choose to change the way I react. And that can be applied to any situation. If you have a difficult relationship with someone, if you change your viewpoint, could things be different? Most likely, yes. In terms of their fear of public speaking, if you change your point of view, can things be different? Yes, they absolutely can.
Great, great. And so just can you give me like a resume of the courses that you do and the
Sure.
services that people can sign up to?
Absolutely. So my signature course is the Breakthrough Virtual Speaker Program, and that's a 7-week course. It's delivered as a group coaching program that I deliver online, and it takes you through 7 modules, and I've got a 5-part framework. Firstly, working through confidence, and then your tech setup, your content, presentation skills, which makes the bulk of the training because it's all about that really. And then lastly is action, putting your skills into practice, whether you want to do a webinar, a masterclass, speak at a virtual event or conference, or do some videos. It's about how are you going to use those skills to build your business or further your career. So that course is a practical course where you end up actually completing some videos or putting together a presentation by the end of those 7 modules. So that's the Breakthrough Virtual Speaker Program. I also offer some one-to-one coaching over 6 months. And lastly, some team training as well for companies who want their teams to perform better so that they can, build their brand awareness, get more visible, and win more business effectively through their presentation skills across the board from their team members.
Great, great. And what is the best way to contact you?
So my most important social media channel for me is LinkedIn. So that's where I am most, but I do post on other channels as well, like Instagram and Facebook. But LinkedIn is the place that I hang out the most. So they can connect with me on LinkedIn, or else they can also email me, Sarina at breakthroughpublicspeaking.com. And I'll certainly get back to them. So either by email or LinkedIn DM, they can contact me that way.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thanks, Sarina. I really appreciate you coming onto the show and sharing your wisdom, particularly to do with public speaking and virtual public speaking.
That's my pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on.
That's all right. I'll catch up soon.
Thank you.